We can start. So, warm welcome everybody from cloudy Netherlands. I'm sure that it's very hot and at least sunny at your place. That's what I hope for you. Welcome everybody, marhaba, and bonjour à tous, or bonsoir à tous, I have to say. And I'm happy to have you all here today. And if you want to hear the translation, please press on the lower right button that says interpretation. So if you want to hear it in French, en français, then just press on the button French, and then you will hear a simultaneously translation into French. It's very helpful. So please choose your language, whether English or French, so that you can hear everything that we are saying. If somebody is asking a question in French later on, you can press on English and you will hear the English version of that question. It's very helpful. So please do that so that we can clearly hear everybody. Without any further delay, I wanted to start and kick off and say that today is all about you. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Yeah, or maybe we can, yeah. Today is all about you. And we as Orange Corners, we have a big network of 16 locations, 16 hubs that you have all been part of in one of those 13 countries. And I'm excited to share that 4 more countries will join us. If you haven't switched off your mic, please do so. And if you want to raise a question later on, there will be opportunities. So if that's possible now to switch off your mic, that will be great. Thank you very much for that. So 16 locations, 13 countries, 4 more countries will be added soon in our network. That's Burkina Faso, Palestinian territories, Jordan, and the region of Darfur in Sudan. 650 to 700 entrepreneurs per year are graduating from one of our programs, and you are one of them. That means, in my eyes and ears, 700 opportunities. 700 opportunities to connect, exchange, and interact with each other. There are so many opportunities that you can explore together with each other. But, and I hear you saying, but, and I can hear you already. Everybody today in this call is saying, okay, Cleopatra, how are we going to do that? How am I going to export from South Africa to another country? And Abu Rahman, how are you going to do it? Well, this is why we're here today. Okay, today we're going to speak about how do you become export ready. And together with our partners and colleagues from CBI, we will be taking you through that journey. But I wouldn't be able to start without giving the word first to our wonderful colleague and responsible for the Department of, or Deputy Director of the Department of Sustainable Economic Development, but also private sector development, and a strong passion for entrepreneurship. Strongly, and an anecdote, his son is one of the most successful startups in Cape Town. Please, I'd like to welcome Johan Vul.
Thank you, Theodore, and welcome to all of you on this evening session, or at least for Europe it's an evening session, maybe for some of you it's a morning session, but on how to get ready to export. I'm excited to be here today and to officially kick off this session. And I'm also happy to see that we pay attention to the language barrier, and that this session is taking place in 2 languages, at least if you found the right button at your screen to switch from English to French and vice versa. As the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we firmly believe in the power of both youth and the development of the private sector. Both are driving forces of a prosperous future. And for this reason, both are at the heart of our foreign development agenda. Today, you will learn more about how to get ready to export, how to explore new markets in your own country, but also in your neighboring countries and even the region and beyond. As we all know, before you start, it's always important to do a proper market research. The CBI, which is the Dutch Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries, has excellent tools and documents for your benefit on this. So I encourage you to have a look at them. You will hear about it in this session, but also on their website, there's a lot of information which can help you. And with the Orange Corners program, currently active in 16 cities across Africa and the Middle East, and soon in more, as Theodore already mentioned, we believe in partnerships. The whole program is built upon partnerships. This alumni community, which is gathering around this session tonight, that you are part of, is an excellent way to connect, explore synergies, form partnerships, and grow your horizon and your business. Youth participation is important because you are the present and also the future is yours. In Africa alone, you as youth make up some 60% of the population. So also that is describes the importance of youth in participation. We want to hear from you, and we want to understand how to better facilitate you. Because both at CBI and at Orange Corners, we want to continuously improve our programs. And for that, we need your input. I hope this session will be the start of many cross-border collaborations, and I'm looking forward to hear more from your successes. Keep up the good work. And although it is not always easy, we, as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and our programs, such as CBI and Orange Corners, are committed to help you grow your business, employ more young people, and become successful enterprises in Africa and in the Middle East. A big thank you to the Orange Corners and CBI for setting up this session. I'm happy to see that we are turning the energies of our programs into fruitful synergies, and I wish you a very successful and fruitful and good session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeroen. And I'm happy to see that we have already 61 participants and the number is growing. So without any further delay, I'd like to give the floor to my colleagues. Have a good start, an interactive start. Use the chat function and do not forget the interpretation button. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Theodore and Johan, of course, for your warm welcome. I'm Rikke van der Veen. Welcome from my side. I work at CBI, and today it's my function or my job to keep an eye on the chat. So before we start with the main session, and we're going to talk about the 4 stages of export and how to get export ready, I would really encourage you, but I see that you're already doing it, really use the chat and ask everything that you want to know from us. Put it in the chat. We're with quite a big and still growing audience, so we cannot give everybody the floor, but I will collect those questions and try to ask them during the Q&As. And also, if we cannot ask your question right now, we will follow up with an email after the session, and we will send you information and links to sources, to relevant sources, so you can look up the information yourself. But therefore, it's also very important that you ask questions, because we would like to know what is the information that you're looking for, right? So again, please use the chat for the questions. And also let us know if there's something with the sound or with the translation, because we might be able to solve it, of course. Before we start, I have a first question for you. Could you please put in the chat in which sector do you work and with what kind of products do you work? So what do you produce, or what would you like to export? Are you active in the coffee sector or IT outsourcing, clothing industry? Please let us know right now, because the more information we have about you, the more relevant we can make this session and the email. Thank you, and let's go to you, Tove, for the main session.
Yes, thank you very much, Rikke, and also a warm welcome from me. My name is Tove Antonissen, and I will be basically guiding and talking you through everything you see here in this program today, which means we're going to start with what we have now called the 4 stages of export. And obviously, this is something that we have tried to cluster to make it more like, steps you take and to not let it be overwhelming. The first step you do is you get ready. And what do we mean by this? Basically, this is where if you are a startup, you start putting your company, your business together. You find out, where do I get my material, my input from? How do I organize all the internal processes, everything with the stakeholders around me? Basically, really building up your business. If you already are active, perhaps not in foreign markets, but locally, getting ready means, okay, what do I need to change? How do I need to prepare to also start selling across borders? That's exporting. The second stage, that's what we call finding a market. And basically, this is where you try to locate a market where you can sell your existing products. Where do your products fit? And this can be nearby, or it can be further away. But this is basically the puzzle that you're now entering. So you have gotten ready in the sense of you have a solid business, and you now try to find new markets where you can sell your products. From there on, you go to the third step, finding a buyer. Now, a buyer and a market, they belong together because the buyer will be the one through whom you reach the market you have identified for your products. Now, we put it here as a separate step because basically, if you find a market and you know who you in the end want to sell to, the buyer in your case may not be the same person. You may well go through someone else, different players in the chain. And we will look at that more closely also in today's program. And the final step, the fourth one in our little sort of four-step approach here, we call doing business. And what we mean by this is you're not an exporter if by chance at one point you sell something across borders. You are doing business, you become exporting and an exporter when the orders return. So you build something longer term and you make sure that this is something you build on and you have a business relationship going on with your buyer. So quite a difference in at which stage you are as a startup business or already an exporter. And this is actually where we would now again like to turn to you, because I see activity in the chat, which is brilliant, but we also have a poll where my colleague Elina will now put up something in the screen where you let us know so that we know who we have in the room today. At which stage are you? Are you one, getting ready? That stage, you know, building up your business? Are you two, already looking to see, okay, to which foreign market could I sell? Or are you perhaps already saying, okay, I know where I want to go. I'm now trying to locate the buyer who will buy from me in order for me to reach the final consumers in the market I have identified? Or are you actually doing business already, getting those orders coming back to you once you've started selling in a foreign market? Now, and we have, let's keep it up for a few more seconds, I think, because I still see some changes. But I think we are getting a pretty clear picture, which we will share with you in a bit. But I see we still have some replies.
Yes, let's wait a few more seconds. I see that almost half of you have voted now. So please, if you haven't done it, vote, vote in which stage you are at the moment.
Are you getting ready? Are you already trying to find a market where your products fit? Or are you already at the stage where you look at potential buyers within that market you have identified? Or are you actually already exporting and doing business? I think we have a pretty clear picture here, Eline. What do you say?
I say that's true. Let's share the results with you. Let's see. There we are.
So actually, a lot of you are already looking to find a buyer, but this is a very, very close call because the second largest group that I can see here are those of you getting ready, getting all the bits and pieces to work within your business, looking to orientate how can you get your business to work in the best way before you look to find a market and a buyer. And actually, quite a few of you are also already doing business, which I think it's is brilliant to hear, actually, because I think then you're looking to expand probably also and look for new markets. So that's it. You're never done as an exporter, are you? Thank you very much, Aline. I think we can move on. I can still see the poll, so if it can. Oh, I probably need to share it, click it with myself. That way we can move on. Thank you very much for participating. It was very nice for us to see at which stage you're all in. Now we know who we have in our audience today. Now we're going to focus today, if we look at the topics that we mentioned, we're going to focus on the two first stages of getting ready to export. The one is getting ready then, and the next one will be finding a market. As we already heard, CBI has a lot of information which we want to share with you. That's part of the finding a market stage. But let's start with getting ready. There we are. Now, why export? Now, if you see this question and you know you're attending a masterclass about getting ready to export, the question might seem out of place because obviously you are interested in exporting, otherwise you would not be here today. However, I would like to just take some time to look at the different options you have. Basically, what you want to do as a business is grow your business. Export may well be a means of growing your business because it increases your market. You add to it by adding new countries and new regions to whom you are selling. It increases your market in every way, basically. However, there are other ways of growing a business. And if you look at this plain white t-shirt here in the picture, say, for instance, in the current market where you're active, where you're building up your business or where you're already exporting to, but your current markets, say if you're not looking to expand and add new markets in order to grow, you may also want to start, instead of just selling t-shirts, you could do long sleeves, for instance, or stripes, or you could do different colors, or maybe you add some other pieces of clothing to go. So basically you have more product variation whom you would like to sell to. So you increase your product portfolio rather than the customer base that you're looking to sell to. That is one way of doing it. It's a strategic decision, but we just want to point out that exports may certainly be the best opportunity for you, but it doesn't have to be. There are other ways to grow as a business. Now, also, if you're looking to export, then you start looking around. In order for you to be able to export, then you also need to look at, is there a match? Do your products fit? This is where you come in with, okay, so do you have a market you can identify where your products actually fit with what people are looking for? This may be Europe, and I will return to Europe as an example many times during this webinar because this is the information CBI offers. It's mainly about the European markets, but also don't forget to look closer to home. Maybe you can expand in your local markets or maybe your regional markets. So it doesn't have to be Europe, even though I use it a lot, but we would still like to point it out that there are different ways. We will focus on export and how to go about it, but don't see it as a given that this is how you need to do it. Just a quick note, I see that someone has raised their hand. We have a very short webinar today with a packed program, so I think the best way would be if you can post your question in the chat and someone will get back to you if it's a technical question. If it's a content question, we will return to that during the Q&A session after each of the content sessions. So we will get back to you, but just in order to keep it efficient, please post your questions in the chat. Now, so getting ready, what do we mean by that? We mentioned it several times, and I said it's building up your business. Now, if we really turn to getting ready to find new markets and focus on exports, which topics should you be concerned with when you look to how to build up your business for exports for new markets? There are a couple of things that you need to be concerned with, and one of them is certainly the differences between your current market, perhaps your local market, and the differences between foreign markets you are aiming for. Now, here we have, for instance, quality, and this I mentioned specifically again because your local market may look for a different quality, often a lower quality, than at least the European market. And this is just something that we know from experience. Europe, while it may offer good opportunities, is also certainly a difficult market. In terms of quality, the requirements are really high. That said, if you look at other foreign markets, if you stay closer to home, the quality requirements may be more similar to what you are used to. Or if you go, for instance, to the Middle East, they may be slightly different, but they may still not be what they are in Europe. So basically here, what we mean, and what you already heard in the welcome speech also, do research, look at what the differences are, but be prepared that selling to different markets requires different quality requirements. And sometimes it may involve certification. And again, here I'm speaking quite specifically also for Europe, where we see a lot of certification required. The second thing is, if you're looking to grow your business, you must also be prepared to deliver, to scale up. Now, the question to ask here is, do you have the capacity? Can you deliver? Say those orders do start coming, and perhaps there are larger orders than you're used to right now. Are you able to increase the volume at which you are producing at the moment? Can you scale up? This involves also having competent people working there, making sure, again, that the quality is consistent, so that, because once you start exporting a certain level of quality, you cannot go down, you cannot lower the quality. So you need to be able to train people to have the capacity. And reaching also the third point here in this slide, you may need to invest. It may require equipment, technical issues. It may require finance in some way, and it may require you to have access to finance and to find out how you can get that. Now, in order for you to become eligible for access to finance, the very first step, and this is very much when you're in the getting ready stage, and especially as a startup, you need to have a complete and solid overview of all your costs, all your spendings, everything that goes into it, and also figure out, okay, so if I increase my level of production or service or whatever, you increase, you scale up, what does it mean in terms of costs? How much do I need to produce? Where are the tipping points if I invest? And so on. So you need to have a clear picture of where you're standing financially and have everything well documented and a good overview. So these are the steps we mean, basically, the most important ones at least, when we talk about getting ready. Now, I'm very pleased to say that we have two representatives from this group, from the Orange Corners alumni, to quite different companies, also representing two different countries. Now, Theodore, I do see that you have a question. Would you like to say something?
No, I was just clapping for them.
Oh, sorry, I was looking too quickly. Yeah, exactly. But the applause are well deserved for sure, because I think it's brilliant. We have Asim Amin from Sudan, who is an exporter. And we have Amy Beth Quanson from Ghana, who is has built up and is still developing her coffee company, Kavamoka. And they have been willing to share their stories and their journey so far with you today, which I'm really happy about. So I would like to turn first to Asim, actually, because I was just sharing about, how you can grow your business in different ways. And you clearly, as an exporter, connecting local producers of sesame and Arabic gum to foreign markets, you always looked beyond your country's borders. So my question to you, Asim, if you would like to share this with us, what made you look for international markets? What was the appeal to you? Asim, you are muted, so if you could please unmute. Yes.
Okay, now you hear me?
We can hear you now, thank you.
Okay, so thank you too, man. And it's so nice to see you again. And I would like to say hi for everybody who's online right now. my story is a little bit, you could say, like simple and funny, talking about getting into import and export from Sudan, taking into consideration almost 2 or 3 years ago when there was sanctions, where it was so completely difficult to get into the export. But we in Sudan, we noticed that there is a growing demand on sesame seeds and Arabic gum. It's used widely all over the world, exactly like when we speak about Arabic gum. So we noticed that there are lots of suppliers. They come and try to buy from Sudan. All of a sudden, I remember that one day we were chatting with a friend of ours when this friend told us about someone who was, hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay, just a minute.
Yes, please. Yes, you were talking to a friend, Asim. I think we could hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So I was talking to my friend, and he gave us a chance. He told us like there is somebody who wants to import sesame seed from Sudan to India. That time we had no idea about import and export. So what we tried to do, we tried to know if there is like a real market for sesame seeds, and if this can make difference. Almost that time we were like the guys in the first stage, which was getting ready, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yes, almost. We were some kind of getting ready or getting to know the market. We knew that we did like a small research, and we found that there is a huge opportunity in the market of exporting sesame seeds and Arabic gum. We found like we visited the public centers to know about the information of the numbers of the exports of sesame seeds and Arabic gum, and we found like the numbers were over 200,000 metric tons. So that was a huge number. But the actual almost 200,000 metric ton was the number of the production. But the exports was less than that. Not exactly the export, but there was some problems about I cannot explain it like I miss just the English words, but the idea was that there was a real market. So in Sudan, mostly import and export is done traditionally. Like traders have to go and find out through their, personal relationship suppliers. So what we said, like it would be a huge opportunity if we could get access to this market and digitize it and get access to thousand numbers of suppliers from maybe all over the world. So when we digitize it, the idea was, we can have much more access. In addition to, as local suppliers, they work traditionally. So when we use the technology, we can have much more reach to suppliers. We can easily scale up and reach markets that these suppliers have not reached before.
Exactly. You realized there was a gap that you can fill in order to make it more beneficial for the producers that you represent, basically the suppliers.
Yes, you could say that too.
And if you look at the issues that we just mentioned, such as quality and well, scaling up, you mentioned also already, and access to finance, are these issues you recognize also, such as the quality issues? Because you are now becoming someone who, on behalf of the suppliers, you find buyers, basically.
Yes, by the way, Tuve, like quality is the most important thing when we come to speak about import and export. Exactly in our case, like we met, like personally, I met more than 5 exporters who have tried to export from Sudan, like once and twice. Some of them because they have some issues of quality. They used to make agreements to import certain crops, but then when they receive their goods, they find like the goods are not as the same as they agreed upon. So there was a huge problem with quality. These suppliers, some of them, they have left the Sudanese market. So simple, like we could say that if you don't pay too much attention for quality, you might lose your clients. And as we are starting up, or we are on our first steps, quality should be the most important thing that we should pay attention to.
I think that's a very strong and a very clear message to everyone here also listening today. Quality is key. And I fully agree with you. And I have recognized this also in other stories. Indeed, you get a chance, you need to take it because it's easily lost.
Yes, because sometimes like it requires only one chance. Sometimes you get only one chance. Either you take it and you execute it properly, paying attention to every detail, or you lose it and you get out of the market.
Thank you. That is very clearly put, Sachin. Thank you very much for sharing this. And I would like to over to Amy Beth, who has a different kind of company because she is in the coffee business. Amy Beth, you also started a few years ago and you have been building up, getting ready with your company. Do you also recognize this? Tell us a little bit about the journey so far for you.
Hi everyone. My name is Amy Beth, as Toby said. I'm very excited to be here, to be a part of Orange Corners, doing a lot of work in terms of investment, access to market, and business advisory for growing companies. And I think that is going a long way in getting us ready for things such as export. So we started in 2015. We started as pop-up cafes that were affiliated with incubator spaces. And I had some experience working in the Kenyan market. So my initial approach was to get coffee, from Kenya and Ethiopia, which were the popular places for coffee, and then brew it in country. But when we started, it became rather, there was a question of, but isn't there coffee in Ghana? Because we have cocoa, we might have coffee, but nobody seemed to know about it. So that took us on a whole journey of, finding the source for, what our products would be. And it was very important for us for it to be as local as possible, get sourcing ingredients from Ghana, having impact on the job market in Ghana, being able to innovate based on what we have available in Ghana. So that took us on a journey to coffee farms. And we discovered that Ghana actually does have a decent amount of coffee. And we've been growing coffee since the 1930s. But unfortunately, what has happened to coffee in Ghana is that because of cocoa has completely overshadowed coffee. And most of the places that grow coffee also grow cocoa. So usually the farmer has a choice on what to grow. And because cocoa has a ready market, they would, automatically go with cocoa. So it took us, we started really small, like buying small quantities. And then in 2019, we made a bold step in going into the manufacturing and packaging of coffee grown in Ghana for wholesale and retail, mostly in Ghana. So to start that off, we got our roaster. So we started by getting the roaster, which was very critical to supply. We were lucky enough to be able to get a good big roaster right from the start. So that was very helpful. We quickly identified that, yes, we wanted to be a global company. We want to compete in global markets, but we needed to start with our local markets. So that's what we started with. Ghana coffee is relatively not popular globally. So even with our local, and even locally, it's not that popular. So we're trying to find out, what do you think about this coffee? Is it good? Do you like it? And we had such resoundingly positive feedback. That was the first step for us. The product was good. Okay, so once we established that it was good, let's start selling to the Ghanaians. Let's use them as our first, test market. And interestingly, there are other people in Ghana. So, there are people from the Dutch embassy in Ghana. There are, so many tourists that come through Ghana. So let's also approach them and see how they feel about our coffee. Because if they like it, chances are if you're sending it to their country, they could also like it. So we also explored that in our getting ready. You know, what does the market like? What do the markets we want to go to? What kind of taste do they like? And they were surprised because we do Robusta in Ghana. And Robusta tends to have a connotation of, you know, it's the ugly stepsister, so to speak, of coffee. So they were surprised. They were like, are you sure this is Robusta? It tastes good. I like it. I didn't think I would like, you know, Robusta as well as we are. So I was like, yes, it is. And what did we do? Again, it's the focus on quality. So we strive for fine Robusta. So we're processing our coffee. We're making sure that, you know, the defects are out. We're roasting it on our roaster. We're focused on quality, and it does make a big difference in what the product is. So that was our first step for us as Kawamoka.
I think this is really inspiring. And I also love how you say that you have to discover yourself that there was coffee in Ghana and that you have it, because in the end you have the same goal, put Ghana, put your country on the international market, but you had to start from scratch. And with the Robusta Arabica discussion, I can totally agree. Robusta sometimes has a poorer reputation than a good Robusta offers. So that's something I think many of us Europeans need to learn, though, because you do have some explaining to do. But the tasting part was good. And I like how you're looking for a fit for the market and lose that shorter feedback loop, really going local first in order to get that confirmation. And clearly also the Dutch and the foreigners in Ghana, brilliant. I think that's very inspiring. Thank you, both of you, very much. We will get back to you also in the next content part of this webinar, because I would now like to move on to what we called step 2 in our little 4-step approach, which is finding a market. Now, and for this, we really enter the market research part, and this is very much where CBI also has an important role to play, and especially also, again, the European market. But overall, I dare say that everything that's covered by the CBI, be that European markets, we can easily translate in our minds to cover also international markets, because the aspects are so important. Now, for this, again, as I said, I will talk you through the content today, because again, I will not do it alone, but I will have the pleasure to talk to CBI's Market Information Platform representative, Jantien Rutte. Hi, Jantien.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening to some of you.
Good evening, good afternoon.
And joining with so many people on this webinar.
Good one there, Jantien, yeah, because I see we have a huge number of participants with it, which is really brilliant. Perhaps, Jantien, because we have mentioned CBI quite a few times, but maybe you would like to introduce both yourself and CBI also in a couple of words.
Yes, so I will start with myself to keep that very short. I'm Jantien Rutte, and I'm one of the program managers from our market intelligence teams from CBI, whereby we make market studies for certain 14 sectors. And CBI, in short, is the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. And we are, like Orange Corners, part of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. And CBI is funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And basically our mission is to connect small and medium-sized exporters in developing countries to the European markets and also to regional markets, and thereby contribute to the sustainable and inclusive economic growth. And to do so, we develop projects in 14 sectors where we are active, and we operate in more than 30 developing countries. But we do have emphasis on, at this point, on the MENA countries, West and East Africa, the Sahel countries, and specific Asian countries. And well, for us also important that we have within our new strategy a focus, for example, on the importance of youth and gender and digitalizations. So we also, within our projects of the CBI, we focused on these items as well. And we, within the market information of market intelligence team, we noticed that there is quite limited access to market information, and therefore we make market studies. We make more than 300 studies on a year basis, based on the 14 sectors. and they are all available for SMEs in all countries on our website for free.
Yes, exactly. And these are the sectors that you just mentioned for which you make market information, offer market information. What is your main reason? Because you said you realized there was a lack of information, but how do you go about deciding what you present? Well, the sectors, not so much, but the content. What do we need to look at? What kind of information is needed in Africa, Asia, Latin America, where you have for whom you are writing these studies, basically?
Yeah, so the information that we gather is based on these 14 sectors that you see now here, and all these 14 sectors we make the information which is relevant to prepare yourself for exports. So we have a mix between primary and secondary data, which we gather together in the market studies. And we focus on market knowledge from people in the field. And that's all together we combine in our studies. And we have the studies basically divided into a market analyze part and a market entry part. And market analyze part is the trends on the European market, for example, and statistics and outlook on the European markets. And the entry models are based on tips for how to export or how to find buyers or how to organize your logistics. And what we do is we make them very practical, easy to read, and well, free of charge, so that you can download them from our website, that you can use them. And basically also that you can use them to help gather your information for your product or based on your company. And per sector, we make product fact sheets or country fact sheets, whereby we base ourselves on the most important products. For example, within the fresh fruits and vegetables sector, we choose the main products, and we make specific product fact sheets on those products, which we also place on our website. And yeah, the idea is that it's accessible to all small to medium-sized exporters who have the wish to export within those 14 sectors.
Exactly. So basically what you have done is you have done part of the work already. And as you said, you really aim to present it in an easy way. And I know we have, if I show the next slide, we have an example of what you said, that you want it to be practical. Perhaps you can explain what we're looking at here also.
Yeah, so what we do in our studies is that we provide of course the information, but we try to translate it, for example, as you see here, into tips that are easy to read for the people, and that are really to the point, and that you can use within your company, within your product or your service. And so we do that on tips. For example, we give examples of already existing SMEs that are already exporting to the European market, so you can see how they have developed themselves, or you can check their website how they export, or what is their main, for example, on CSR relevant topics which they use to export to Europe, so that all that you can use for yourself as tips, as examples, but also to maybe which you could use to apply to your own company, which can benefit for you.
Exactly. And I think this is also the development that we have seen taking place at the CBI. Make it as relevant as possible and make it as easy as possible. I think this is also, in my view, what sets CBI market information apart from the rest. It really is simple language and actions you can take. I think that would be the summary.
Yeah, and I think we could add that if we as CBI implement our projects and we start with our projects, one of the interventions we do with the SMEs is making an expert marketing plan, and we use our market intelligence studies, the information we have there, we use with the SMEs to help them to make the expert marketing plan. So that's how you can make it practical also.
Exactly. In the end, information is what you need in order to take those strategic decisions, right?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much, Jantien, and I hope that you will all go and have a look at the CBI Market Information website. We already shared the link here at a couple of slides ago, let's say, but just also to remind you, just also to remind you, we will send out after this webinar, we will compile a list of for you with sources, information, relevant studies. So everything you share in the chat about yourself and your questions, we will get back to them, also sharing sources that you can turn to, including, of course, also everything that you can find on the CBI website. Thank you, Jantien. I will continue now looking at what kind of topics we are dealing with in the finding a market stage of our approach, that as we are using it here today. Also, I know I mentioned we will also allow questions from the chat and to tackle them also during this webinar. We will do so in after we present this part of the webinar, so I have not forgotten. So please do keep those questions coming. We will get back to you in a bit, but I will first talk you through the content of this stage. And the first thing I would like to point out is basically that when we're talking about exporting and we're looking to find a market, it does not necessarily mean that you are selling directly to that market. I already mentioned it when we said buyer, but the same thing applies when you're looking to find a target market. Again, I'm using Europe here as an example, but it doesn't mean that Europe is the only region in the world who works like this. Instead, just think about what you know about other regions you may be familiar with. Europe functions, the European Union, all the darker countries here on this slide, functions as a single market. And with that, we mean that there is one border towards the rest of the world, basically. Now, what this has led to is that we have had trade hubs created. This is a very practical reason. You see it elsewhere in the world also, even if they're not single markets. But we have, if you look at the stars here on the slide, we have sort of entry points and hubs in Europe where products often enter to be further redistributed throughout Europe to other countries. And one star here, for instance, is in the Netherlands. We have the port of Rotterdam, which I'm sure you've all heard about. If you want to fill a container and you want to ship it, it's better, especially if you're dealing with smaller niche products, to do so clustered, combined. You ship it to one country such as the Netherlands or Germany, for instance, where you may have a distributor who resells the products to different markets. This is, as I said, particularly true if you're talking about smaller products, niche products, and also if you want to reach sort of the, look for instance at the large countries up in the north. They're large in terms of size, but not a lot of people live there. So if you have a niche product and you want to reach those markets, they quite often go through a European distributor based in the Netherlands or Germany. So just something to bear in mind, that identifying a market is the first step, and then you need to still find out how to reach that market. Now, sit back for a while, because now I will tell you about the most important topics that we heard from you that are of interest when you are looking to find a market. Again, I want to point out, I will present it to you and talk about why this is important, how it relates to exporting and finding a market. In the end, you will need to do the research, so we will share material, because I will not be able to go into all details for the specific products and sectors we are present today. I will try to give some examples though, so bear with me and just listen in. The first thing that Jantien also mentioned, trade data, trade statistics. This can be a very, very good starting point if you want to identify a market for your product. Basically, what it will tell you is where is their demand for your type of product. We already, in trade statistics, we don't have too many details, but we do know who the large importers are. We can see from developments where imports are increasing. And also very important for you, if you're from a country which may not be well known in a market, in a sector per se. Look at the existing trade relations that you have. With which countries do you do business? Who do you export to? Where is your country known? And where do you already have existing trade relationships? Because it's always easier to build on something which is already there, put in place, instead of starting completely from scratch. Doesn't mean it cannot happen, just means it's easier to build on a positive trend which is already happening. Now, part of the things you can also find in trade statistics, and something I wanted to point out specifically here, is seasonality. So you can look at if there are specific seasons where products are more in demand than others, or at least imported to a greater extent. This is particularly true for fresh produce. Again, if we use Europe as an example, in Europe we have seasons. So we have a winter season, a cold season, where we do not have a lot of our own produce, and this is where we rely heavily on imports. In the summer season, this is the season we're in right now, and it's quite warm here, I must share with you. In the summer season, we do have good fresh fruits and vegetables, but it's not always enough. So in some cases, we still add on to that by importing. In others, as I said, it may be that you have more opportunities in the winter season. And even more important than this for you, if you try to fit in someplace here, then for the winter season, there are quite commonly also large suppliers already available, countries which you can see also if you look at trade statistics that pop up. But in between those big suppliers, there will always be windows of opportunities where supply slows down from one supplying country, but is not yet taken over by another. So these are all factors to bear in mind. And also if we talk about seasonality, obviously the most important effect will be on fresh produce or products which are bound to season in that sense. But also bear in mind for other sectors such as anything in textiles, home decoration, fashion. We do have a winter season in Europe where we tend to go for warmer fabric, cozier quilts, what have you. So there's something to bear in mind, that those differences are there and they will affect demand when we want it and what kind of products, fabrics, textures we are looking for. So just something to bear in mind when you're looking for opportunities, unless you stick to the always warm countries, but even there might be differences. Now, also something to look into, and this I think was brilliant as we heard from Amy Beth already, competition. Even in a country like Ghana where you have coffee, you still have certain countries which are so dominant when it comes to certain supply that the competition also on the local market is big when it comes to imported, in this case, coffee from Kenya, for instance. This is something you can, of course, find out through trade statistics, who are the dominating players. Like if we stick to the fresh fruits in Europe, we have oranges, we have our own European supply from the Southern European countries in the summer seasons. And then in the winter, we will move to South Africa, and in between we'll do a bit of Egypt, perhaps, etc., etc. Those are the competitors. So at a country level, you can look at competition from trade statistics. Again, we will share a good source where you can look up your trade statistics. Just also look at the CBI information where it's explained quite clearly, by the way. So you can also start there if you don't want to dig into a database. When you dig down deeper, do your research, though, you need to be more specific than just a country, because in the end, you're competing with other businesses. So you're competing with companies who also offer something. Now, this relates a bit to the fourth topic we have here on this screen, which is segments. What is a segment? What do we mean by that? Basically, what you need to identify is which clustered form of a market can you sell to. And I'll give an example. You have segments which may be high-end, good quality, good price, higher price usually, and lower volumes. This is sort of the high-end segment and could apply to different sectors and different products, as opposed to the low-end segment, where we have bulk products, we have large volumes, we have lower margins, lower price, but the quality can also be a bit less. So it doesn't has to be as high as the high-end segment. That's one way of segmenting a market. Another way would be to look at, for instance, households. Are you looking for single households, and what do they need? Smaller packages, maybe if they live in a smaller apartment or house, housing is small, so they don't have a lot of space. Maybe they need to have flexible products. Maybe they need to have multifunctional use. That could be a segment. Or for instance, an age group. So you could aim at young people or children, or as we have in Europe, an aging population. So we have a lot of people who are getting at a higher age and they're still active and they still have money and they also have time. So in many cases, it can be an attractive group to look at if your product fits. So this is where you then per segment need to look into. So which other companies are competing here? Which are the suppliers I need to look at here? So if you look at statistics, you will get all the segments. They will tell you everything about all the products which are called t-shirts, as I just had in one example. If you look at segments, you will have the high-end quality t-shirts, and then that might be your segment, or you have the bulk with the price, etc. Now, for you, from everything that what I've seen about and learned about the companies represented here today, in general, I don't think you will be competing much on price and volumes. You're probably looking at other segments in this case. And then, of course, we have the all-important trends. Trends which you need to be able to sort of, that's your reason for selling. It needs to fit. And what do you mean by trend? It's not just the fashion colors in a season or what have you. These are larger developments. It means also what to emphasize when you sell your product. What is interesting right now? What is the market looking for? Well, to give one very clear example, also an international example, certainly also important in Europe, is, for instance, sustainability. It's basically in itself perhaps already more than a trend. It's a development that is here to stay. But what happens within sustainability, there are things going on, let's say. So where, for instance, it used to be enough to say that, okay, it's ethical or it's environmentally friendly or what have you. The trend now, because it's a mature trend and it's here to stay, is that we want more details. We want to know, okay, so who produced it? Who are my producers? Why is it ethical? In which way? What makes it environmentally friendly? Was it made from waste, or do you not produce any waste when you use it? And so on. So it's getting into deeper levels of detail. And this is now just in general something I mentioned. Another general trend that will be interesting, I think, for many of you is the health trend. So if we look at, like Asim mentioned, sesame, Arabic gum, all of these natural additions that we look at with nutritions, etc., those are also very much fitting into the overall health trend. If you then can combine it, for instance, with the sustainability trend, and you can tell why, this would be sharing a story about the product, then you might be onto something. So this is basically part of how you can make the market interested in your product. At the same time, you need to be able to see how your product fits the trend in the target market you're aiming for. As I said, these are general, what I just mentioned as examples, general international trends, very much present in Europe, but also all over the world. But there may be different levels of maturity and how far they are, and which specific about these that people are looking for, which shape they take depending on your target market. So that is definitely part of your research to look into that. One more issue I want to mention, and it gets a separate slide because it's an important one. Requirements are very important. Again, I mentioned it, Europe is, when we talk about quality, very strict. This is certainly also true when we talk about requirements. Now, requirements and legislation, I still want to mention it. I know many of you will not be aiming for the European market, at least not initially, and at least not as a first export market, let's say. I still want to briefly mention how legislation works, because it does work the same in all regions and countries. Legislation basically is requirements set at a governmental level. So in Europe, it can be the European Union. In Europe, we have framework legislation, which basically states that everything, all the products or foodstuffs put on the European market must be safe. This is specifically Europe, might be in other places as well, but not necessarily. What you do have everywhere is that requirements, legislation are not set for specific products. So if you have your specific product, you cannot just Google all the requirements for mango or all the requirements for white t-shirts or what have you. It doesn't work that way. Requirements and restrictions are set for substances. That's the second point here. So, and substances, depending on your product, they can be chemicals that go into a textile product, for instance, and how much can remain in it. Or it can be pesticides that you use if you grow food and how much residues can be left in the product. The importance here is to make sure in your processes, if you are producing products, to make sure that you don't add anything into a product which cannot be there in the target market that you are selling to. And this, again, you cannot look up specifically for your product. Sometimes they will have some information on it. Again, the CBI website summarizes legislation for the sectors covered there. But in the end, it's up to you to find out which chemicals, substances, pesticides you can add to your products. Now, then we also have requirements, which I here call marketing. That basically means, for instance, organic, which I know will be familiar to many of you. If you want to market, to sell a product as organic, then you must meet certain requirements. But it's only if you want to sell it as organic. So here's a little bit of a gray area, let's say. The same goes, for instance, we talked about cocoa, but if we take the step to chocolate, for instance, for marketing purposes, yes, we do say how much cocoa content you need to have in chocolate in order to call it pure, for instance, etc., and which fats you can use. Cocoa butter and a couple of others are allowed on the European market, as an example then. But this is not to say that they would otherwise not be legal to sell on the market as such. They can be sold as foodstuffs, but in order to market them as pure chocolate or organic, as the other example has said, then you have specific requirements that you need to fill. And these are in addition to the other ones that I talked about, the pesticides that you can use, the chemicals you can use in production, etc. So these are the different levels of legislation, and that works the same in other regions also. So while I give examples from the European market, this is also the mindset sort of when you start analyzing requirements to bear in mind. Again, if you look at a foreign market, find out if there is certain certification that is required there. It can be certification required often, or really certification that is always required. To give an example from the European market, you have certification which are add-ons like fair trade or organic in certain segments. In other sectors, it will be almost, well, quite a common requirement at least. Or you have, if you talk about food stuff, you have food management systems, you have Global GAP, which is really a certification in order to guarantee that food has been produced under hygienic circumstances, basically as a proof of compliance with legal requirements. But it's something to find out because each target market will have their own set of requirements and also certification, and to the extent that the certification is used. And finally, packaging is something which is really something to look into, and you can look at packaging from different points of view, from different levels. Packaging can be also simply a legal requirement, just like products have requirements, packaging has requirements. We cannot put any harmful substances, chemicals into that one either, and especially if it comes in contact with food, there are requirements just from a legal point of view. In addition, of course, you can look at it from a marketing point of view. If you are looking to sell your consumer products in consumer packaging in a foreign market, make sure you know what sells, what consumers are looking for. There are differences here also if we look at different European countries, for instance. If you look at you have those, you always have countries which will go for only the trendiest, and it has to have really nice design and good colors. And then you have countries where they say, okay, well, let's just go for a different style, it doesn't really matter, and so on. So packaging is important, both from a sort of point of view of meeting the requirements. And of course, the foremost role of packaging is to protect the product it's in. And second, also to meet the consumer taste if you are not selling to another business who will repack, but if you're selling to the final consumer. And finally, again, of course, packaging, just as it touches upon legislation, it certainly also touches upon trends. So if we talk about sustainability, a lot of effort is going in, I know, not only in Europe, certainly also in Africa, to have more environmentally friendly packaging, move away from plastic, still have good options, options that work basically and do the job just as well. So basically, this is what I wanted to share about this step, finding a market. And I will now ask again our Orange Corners alumni to share their stories. And this time I would like to start off with Amy Beth. I see you already put on your video. Thank you very much. I know you're also in the process of trying out foreign markets, and we already heard that you even find representatives on the local market, which I think is brilliant. Do you recognize these topics, and do you also have experience with them? And perhaps you could add or share something that you have signaled in your journey so far.
Okay. Well, I clicked on the link for CBI, and I saw that it had a lot of good information, especially on coffee. There was even an article on the rise of Robusta as specialty coffee. So I was like, yes.
Good one.
The information is definitely there, but research such as that was definitely key to us identifying which markets we would want to first enter. So when we researched on where, who's drinking coffee, who drinks the most coffee, and it was very clear that it wasn't necessarily Africa now, but the markets that drank the most coffee were the Netherlands, actually, Germany, Italy, the United States. So those were our first countries we identified just on the basis of, volume. And then the next was, things that you've touched on. How close are they? How can we relate to them geographically, culturally? Are these markets that we would be able to understand and then access? And, what is our network? So I find organizations like Orange Corners amazing because, you're in different countries, you give, an immediate access into network. So I would say, use your network, talk to people from those countries that you're interested in, reach out to them. Maybe somebody can help you. And that's what happened in our case. We had somebody who was in Germany, and we sent them some samples of our coffee, both the green coffee and the roasted coffee. And we asked them to just, and in fact, they even offered, they were like, oh no, we love your coffee. We'd love to see how people in Germany, think about it. So they then took these samples to various, and you talked about the segmentation. So we had identified that there were different ways we could enter the market, either as, specialty Robusta, where we're looking to sell our value-added roasted in Ghana coffee, which was our preference. But we also understood that they were exporters who, could also help enter the market. We understood that there were roasters who might want green beans. So we sort of segmented it on that basis. And then our contacts in Germany went and, gave samples to these various people. So this is on the ground research, and then came back with some feedback. I thought it was really amazing. They did a really good job for free. It was like, oh, wow, you guys are awesome. But some of the things we found out was that they preferred the medium roast to the dark roast, for example. With the green beans, some of them, outright rejected. We don't like Robusta. We don't even want to, try it. We prefer Arabica, and our customers do. Some were also like, yes, we like Robusta. Our question is also on price. They gave us feedback around, how it looked, everything. So you have touched on important things. And for us, some of it came up sort of by mistake, because we had to operate on the full value chain, because nobody was really doing that with coffee. So automatically we were working with farmers. We found that the people who were drinking our coffee wanted to know who was growing the coffee. So automatically, by mistake, we knew that story. We knew who that was. And things that you take for granted actually are key things for certain geographies. So we work with women farmers. That was very key. You talked about packaging. They love the brown packaging. And apparently, everybody sells coffee in brown packaging, and it speaks to the sustainability. So we're like, oh, ding, ding, ding. We just seem to, be doing all these things right, even though it wasn't necessarily because we were going into the export market, but it did help. And then on the question of quality as well, I mean, it's one thing to say, for example, our coffee is organic. It's grown organically. Part of it, again, is just the nature of the business. Robusta is more hardy, so you don't need to spray it. It grows on its own. So just by nature, it's organically grown. We can tell them that, but then again, it speaks to certifications. It's one thing to say, hey, my product is the best. It's another thing to have somebody independently say that it is the best. So certifications we found do matter. Telling the story does matter. And it's not necessarily from a PR perspective, but it's also from people genuinely want to know, what are you doing along the value chain? And if you're doing something good, speak about it. We found that has been, very positive for us as well. So yeah, those are the key things that I would say I definitely relate to from your presentation, and we've had that experience as well.
I think that's brilliant to hear. And I'm also happy to hear that you have a lot of things confirmed that you're already doing. Certainly a sustainability packaging. Look, it's good. Glad to hear CBI confirm that Robusta is growing. And just also inspiration for everyone, I think, now here. Just go out there, talk to people, use your network. I think that's the best advice that you can give, really. And so please do, all of you. Beth, thank you very much for sharing your story about your journey so far. And I wish you all the best. I'm sure we're going to find your coffee on the shops here very soon. Maybe not in Holland, but in Germany. I will go and have a look. Thank you so much. I will turn to Asim then. Asim, you heard a lot of different aspects that we talked about. Some of them also recognized and confirmed a bit, let's say, by Beth. Do you also agree that there are so many things to consider when you start exporting? Because it was quite an overload.
Yes, actually, you have spoken about like the requirements that needed for the foreign market that you're exporting to. Like the legislations, the certifications, the packaging, and all these things. But I think there is a huge work that you should do within your country, the country that you're exporting from. For instance, like in my case, like what happened that we first secured the demand before knowing about our product. So you see, like it was a reverse thing. First of all, like you should have known about your product. Then the next step is to look for buyers. In our case, first of all, we had the demand. We know there is a product in our country. There is a product that we can secure and we can sell. But at the same time, we knew nothing about the whole process of import and export. So yes, there is much work that everybody who's planning to export have to do. Too much work. For instance, this work starts from knowing your product, the supply chain, the raw materials, the seasonality. You spoke about the seasonality in Europe, but here also, like when we speak about the crops, we have seasons. There are seasons that where these seasons are connected to the prices. So there are some seasons these product prices are high, and some other seasons that the product prices are low. So you have to know this product that I export, what times in the year that the prices are low, so I could buy a huge in a store, for instance, or what times that prices are high, so I could try to find a way or try to find other suppliers. Then knowing your product and even the areas where these products are being grown. Because sometimes, like in my case, the products that I supply, there are grown in variable and different areas. So I had to know these areas and these products and each area, like if and sometimes like the characteristics of the product produced in this area are completely different than the characteristics of the same product but produced in other area.
Right.
Because my buyer, yes, because the buyer is concerned with these things. So logistics, there is too much work. If you work in export, then logistic is one of the headaches. Logistic is one of the things that you should pay too much attention to, from the areas of growing to your stores, from your stores to the airport, if you are going to export throughout through the airport or to the port. Besides, like the local legislation, sometimes there are legislations can prevent you from exporting certain quantities or certain products. I think like too much work, by the way. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. I believe that, told you like, we know that somebody needs this, then, our homework was, look, yes, this person needs sesame seeds. So we thought it was easy to just go to the market and buy these sesame seeds and export it. Then we found, no, it's not like this. It's not like this. You have to know about the internal logistics and the external logistics. We have to know about the local laws. Sometimes, like areas where these plants are grown, they have local laws, and the general government, they have also local laws about this project. There are many legislations, and there are, just to put the proper pricing, it needs too much work. So what I'm saying, you guys need to do a lot of work.
Basically, you started doing this before you knew how much work it is. Do you still enjoy
Yes,
it?
exactly.
And would you still have made the same decision?
Yes, but so good, so good. Now I know everything. So it's like a piece of cake for me.
Yeah.
I worked harder before, but right now, yes, I know everything.
I think this is really also excellent. So go out there, be there, do your research. Don't be afraid to work hard, and it will pay off in the end when you do have the answers to what you're doing. Thank you, Asim, very much. I think
Yes,
this
yes.
was also really inspiring, and also, well, be prepared. It does require hard work. I know time is flying. I always talk a lot, so that's part of the reasons I know, but even so, Rika, do we have any questions? We can take a couple of questions, I think, from the chat if you have any, and if you don't have any ones that you want to share, just let me know, because I haven't really been able to follow the chat. Yes.
Yeah, we actually don't have many questions, but as you didn't follow the chat, it's maybe good to know that there is a lot of interaction.
Good.
And we have people working in many different sectors, and everybody is exchanging contact information, but not many questions. There was one question that is maybe good to share, but that was a question to Amy Beth, actually, from ETAR. And that was the question, do you have some tips for into influencing farmer crop decisions? Like, how do you get farmers to focus on growing coffee? And Amy Beth, I don't know if you want to say what you replied to it.
Okay, I will. Let me see what my reply was. Yeah, so I was saying it involved a lot of building of trust and education. So, let the farmers see you. They know who you are. Explain what you are doing. So I'm producing coffee. I need the raw material to be able to deliver on my orders. This is the quality that I want. How much are you going to pay? So then you have the price discussion, open, transparent, explain it. And then for us, what also worked really well was that we guaranteed that we would buy whatever they grew. So there was that guarantee. I mean, it was tough for us as a growing business to say that we're going to commit this into raw material when we didn't necessarily have off-takers for all that amount, but we were also dedicated in making sure that we grew the market and we would find buyers. So we committed to the farmers that we would buy what you produced and produce it to our quality. And then what we also did as an incentive was, if you produce a higher quality, we pay a higher price. So there's a lot of, competition between the farmers. And then the last thing that also helped was organizing them into a cooperative. So then you can track, the various activities during the season. You know who they are, you have numbers, you've been to the farms. So all of that, I mean, it took some time. Because I remember when I started, I first started by doing the research. So I had researched on fair trade, for example, and they'd explain the process of certification and audits. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna, go do the farmer work. And then it took us almost a year after that to put together the cooperative. So it takes time. And then, as the numbers grow, the logistics also bring their own challenges, but it's a lot of training, a lot of education, a lot of meetings. And we also had some experts for organic certification come and train them. And it was very funny because the gentleman kept on talking about diversification of product and how you cannot rely on one product all the time because, things happen. And that year, that was earlier this year, there was a crisis in cocoa because Ghana had gone and increased the price on cocoa, and there was, all sorts going on. So the farmers' payments were delayed in cocoa. And everybody was then like, oh, I have coffee. Oh, come and buy my coffee. And we're like, aha, you see, this is exactly what we're talking about. You need to diversify because you never know what would happen. And that really helped us in organizing the farmers and just giving them incentives to grow what we wanted.
Right. Thank you. Tove, maybe one more thing, because there's a lot of interaction in the chat, but I don't see anything in French, and
okay.
that's fine. But I just want to point out if you have a question and you would like to ask it in French, that is also fine because we can translate it and get back to you when we email you more information.
I think that's a good one. And I also think, I already thought we shared a lot of information, and then Asim and Amy Beth, all the topics you mentioned, we could have double the slides and the topics to think about. So for sure, there are a lot of things to think about. As Asim pointed out, at some point you will master the different topics and you will know what you're doing, which means it will cost you less time. And Amy Beth, I still liked what you said, go out there, also replies to your own supply chain, to your own farmers, build up trust. I know you also build up trust in the foreign markets. So I think we have a lot of good takeaways from this webinar, and simply looking at time, because I would love to continue discussing with everyone, because I think there are so many good things being shared here. But we do also need to respect everybody's time because you all have a lot of things to do. So I would like to just point out, as Enrique said, everything you've shared also in the chat, based on what we know about you now, after what you've shared in this webinar, we will put together a package of sources to point out to you where you can find market information, share everything about the topics discussed today by us, by the wonderful entrepreneurs in Beth and Asim, who were so willing to share their stories and experience their journey so far. And basically, when you've listened now it's a question to all of you in the group in this webinar. When you've listened now to all of these topics and you think, okay, I'm on this journey, I'm taking steps, about which topics would you like to learn more? And this is obviously input for both CBI and Orange Corners. And we have them here in English in the poll, but you can see the French translation on the screen. And we made suggestions here. Would you like to learn more about market demand, about trends, about legislation? Number 4, certification. 5, segments. 6, channels. 7, finding a buyer. 8, approaching a buyer. Or 9, using online sources. The sources we will share, basically. So please take some time, share with us which topics correspond to the stage at which you are.
Feels like all of them are relevant.
They are all relevant indeed, but if you have to choose, I think you can choose more than one answer. I think, Elena, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I see many people voting for many different answers, but that's also all right. Okay, of course.
I think most have voted already. What do you think, Eline?
We're almost halfway, so almost 50%. Let's take another 10 seconds and then we'll share the answers.
So we're not pushing you, we're not stressing you, but you have 5 seconds.
Yes, we're at 50%, so.
And we have a clear winner, which I can completely understand, finding a buyer, because in the end, as an exporter, that's what you would like. And all the other topics will sort of also lead to that. I would like to point out also certification. And I know certification is a big one. As Emmy Beth said, in the coffee business, it's an important one. In certain niches, it's an important one also. So there are a lot of things you could say about certification, because there are different kinds and what you need to sort of take into consideration and the different purposes. But certainly, and all in all, I must say, they all get attention, don't they? All the topics. So there is none which we can completely forget about, really. So as we heard, they're all relevant and they're all important. Basically, I would then like to thank you from my part, but I know we would also like to hear about how you guys experienced this webinar, where we touched upon briefly lots of topics. So Rike, maybe you could again encourage everyone sharing in the chats.
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief. Thank you, Tove, for this amazing webinar and information from your side. Yeah, we as CBI and Orange Corners are just very curious about how you like the webinar, and yeah, we would be very happy and it would be very useful for us if you could provide us with some information. So yeah, the questions are on the slide, but could you please write in the chat what did you learn? What did you really like about the webinar? But also what could be improved, and what can we do better? What are the topics that you would like to learn more about? So please let us know your input and your feedback. And yeah, I think to Theodore for a final word.
That must be me. No, Theodore at the beginning.
Yeah,
I'd like to thank Tove for all your very useful information. Also, Amy Beth and Asim. Really inspiring to hear your stories, and I think yeah, it's great for everyone who has been here to hear what you have done in the world of exporting, and yeah, to learn more about all the relevant topics we've seen today. Yeah, I would also like to thank all the participants. Many of you were present today. I think it's great to see so many of you. And yeah, it's just the start of what the alumni community could offer every one of you. So yeah, all in all, I would like to receive your feedback and